Thomas Malthus was born on February 13th, 1766. He was an English cleric and scholar. He was influential in the fields of political economy and demography. Thomas Malthus wrote an essay on the principle of population. He said sooner or later the population would be checked by famine and disease, leading to what is known as Malthusian catastrophe.
Humankind is very, very unique. It can control its environment. It has the ability to transmit knowledge and information and to adapt and to change. We are an ability to change our fertility, mortality, and migration patterns. Birds may change their migration patterns because of changes in the weather or changes in conditions, but humans can change them at a drop of a pin.
Thomas Malthus once said that the power of population is so superior to the power of the earth to produce substance for man that a premature death must in some shape or another visit the human race. He also said that if the present growth trends in world population, industrialization, pollution, food production, and resource depletion continue unchanged, the limits to growth on this planet will be reached sometime within the next 100 years.
People used to tell me that the Chinese would never live with anything but large families when I was first out there in the early 50s. The Muslims, people would say, will not tolerate deliberate efforts to control the rate of reproduction. They both do now. Bangladesh, India, Pakistan are all trying to bring fertility down. I think that those perceptions can change, and they will change only because people begin to realize the implications. If you haven't thought about population growth, you'll say, well, maybe it is immoral. If you've thought about population growth, you may change your mind and say, maybe it's immoral to have a lot of children who will starve. And I think that shift of mindset is very important.
Can we be optimistic? I think certainly. There are many problems that exist, many population issues that exist. In many parts of the world, the mortality levels are far too high for infants, children, and mothers. These have to be addressed. In addition, the density and the ability of people to choose the number of children that they wish and the spacing should also be available. Therefore, I would say that we should be optimistic based on what's happened in the past, but we should be fully cognizant that there are many problems that we have to address. And certainly population is one that we should be prepared to address now and in the coming years.
Thomas came to prominence in his 1798 essay on population growth. In it, he argued that population multiplies geometrically and food arithmetically. Therefore, the population will eventually outstrip the food supply. Between 1798 and 1826, he published 6 editions of an essay on the principle of population, updating each edition to incorporate new material, to address criticism, and to convey changes in his own perspective on the situation.
Today we're going to look at population and the most persistent theory about population growth and its effect on humanity, the one proposed by Thomas Malthus. And what's amazing about the persistence of this theory is its complete lack of connection to actual human history. Alright, so in 10,000 BCE, fewer than 1 billion people lived on Earth. Nearly 12,000 years later, around 1800 CE, human population had grown to still under 1 billion. And about that time, an Anglican minister named Thomas Malthus wrote an essay on the principle of population that explained why this slow population growth was the way things were always going to be. Malthus saw the growing number of poor people on the English streets, and he did what any reasonable thinker would do. He analogized them to rabbits. Same forces that checked the population of rabbits would limit humans too. Predators, harsh weather, epidemics, and starvation. Now, it turns out that humans have ways of dealing with predators. We killed all the lions. And also, we've got this amazing way of dealing with harsh weather that rabbits have never figured out, called clothes. Not to even get into fire and housing. So that leaves us with alien predators, disease, and starvation as the big obstacles. Okay, we're going to address these one at a time. First, Arnold Schwarzenegger already took care of the alien predators. Thank you, Mr. Schwarzenegger. In exchange, we made you governor of California. disease. So around the time Malthus was writing, disease was becoming less dangerous to human populations. And then there's starvation, right? Well, we've argued in the past that starvation is generally a man-made problem, but to Malthus it was still a natural disaster. For Malthus, uncontrolled reproduction was the central problem. Remember, he was, coming from the context of rabbits. He explained it through math. Humans could reproduce geometrically, capable of doubling population every 25 years. But land on Earth is finite, and at best it could only be coaxed into producing small arithmetic increases in food. So you've got population growing geometrically, food growing arithmetically, all the people are gonna die. Now, among simpler creatures, the theory went, food shortages caused immediate famine, but humans would continue to eke out ever more desperate lives as increasing demand raised the price of food and clothing and bread and medicine. Powerful individuals and nations would seize the assets of the weak, but even some of the strong would fall victim to hunger and disease. Inevitably, the population would then dip low enough for the land to recover, giving another generation a chance to repeat the same mistakes. Over time, then, human population would remain roughly constant with the natural fertility of the land. Because he was such a fun guy, Malthus called this theory of history the cycle of misery. This essay is one of the most influential pieces of writing in history. Along with a handful of other works, it established the methods and importance of the modern field of economics. It opened the door to the universe of evolutionary science. And most immediately, Malthusian theory played a devastating role in the Irish potato famine of 1846 to 1851.
It was Thomas Malthus who first made the argument that in every age and in every state, population increases are limited by the means of subsistence, and that when the means of subsistence increases, population will also increase, and that the population increase will be limited by the misery and vice. This pessimistic view on the impossibility of real progress was first made in 1798, ironically just as the revolution was getting underway. However, it took several decades for industrialization to raise the living standards of lower-income people in countries where it occurred.
I'm a goofy goober! You're a goofy goober! We're all goofy goobers! Goofy, goofy, goober, goober! Put your toys away! Well, all I gotta say when you tell me not to play, I say no way! No way, no freaking way! I'm a kid, you say. When you say I'm a kid, I say it again! And then I say thanks! Thank you very much! So if you're thinking that you'd like to be like me, go ahead, try. The kid inside will set you free. I'm a baby, lizzy, I'm a baby, lizzy, I'm a goofy goober!
Oh, what's happening? Huh? His dance moves are